Spine-chilling audio revealed, sinister terror haunted 1,000 soldiers in a forbidden mystery. Jake stood in the living room, a tension knotting his stomach, as the muffled static from the radio twisted and turned into something more sinister, echoing cries, desperate pleas, and horrifying echoes of the past. He flipped the switch, but those eerie sounds refused to fade. Something was alive in Mill Hollow, whispering secrets of a past Jake wanted to forget, secrets too chilling to comprehend. The town lay nestled against an abandoned military base, once a hub of activity, now a decaying monument to forgotten soldiers. Over 1,000 vanished, swallowed by silence and shadows. The factory hum in the distance felt alive, but Jake's late-night shifts left an emptiness at home where laughter should be flourished. Instead, chilling whispers danced through the walls like the ghosts of the soldiers who never returned. Lily and Max were only children, yet they seemed strangely drawn to the dark corners of their world, giggling at things that didn't exist. Shadows lurked just out of sight, casting sinister shapes that made the hairs on the back of Jake's neck stand up. Then, there was Jerry, the neighbor with haunted eyes and a shadowy past. A veteran himself, he offered help that felt far too eager, his smile sharp-edged. Jake tried to dismiss the sick feeling in his gut, but Lily and Max kept talking about the man who watched them from the shadows, their faces lit with a mix of fear and thrill. What were they seeing that he couldn't see? It gnawed at him, the guilt of being away, tied up in the factory while these parenting instincts clawed at him. He needed to protect his kids, but what from? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Late that night, searching for clues in the faded memories of the town, Jake dug deeper into the terrifying recordings circulating Mill Hollow. Each one felt like a stab, voices from beyond calling his children's names, distorting the very fabric of his already frayed heart. The chilling thought of something reaching for them was like ice in his veins. Shadows crawled along the walls of their home, stretching, reaching, as if slithering under the skin of their lives. Stepping back into their once cozy living space, he found Lily and Max perched on the sofa, eyes unfocused yet entranced. Their laughter rang sharper than glass, echoing against the eerie quiet, a sound that twisted with the lingering feeling of dread suffocating the air. What had they heard? Some unseen force gripped Jake, squeezing harder as memories of his time in service resurfaced, comrades lost under the weight of secrets, lives culled by darkness. Just then, the radio crackled violently, a distorted voice breaking through, demanding, calling for Lily and Max. Jake's heartbeat thundered in his ears, a primal instinct telling him to flee, but he couldn't abandon his children. As every nerve in his body screamed for him to act, he found strength in desperation. He sprinted toward the noise, aware now that Mill Hollow was more than just quaint, it was a tapestry of terror woven tightly with his family's fate. What sinister secret pulled Jake deeper into the shadows, where the laughter sounded more like a siren's song? He stepped through the front door. Time was running out, and he was about to plunge into the heart of Mill Hollow's horror. What if the entity gripping his family wasn't just local lore, but something far worse, an inescapable nightmare entwined with the secrets of the base? Jake bolted into the empty street, shadows stretching menacingly around him. The air hung thick with a palpable dread, and the moon's feeble glow did little to illuminate the path ahead. It felt as if the town itself was watching, hiding secrets in every crack and crevice. He could still hear the faint echoes of his children's laughter, twisted by something darker lurking in the night. A rattle startled him from his thoughts. The old factory loomed above him, an iron giant long since rusted and forgotten. He hesitated at the gate, heart pounding like a drum. The stories whispered among townsfolk flooded his mind, how the base had become a grave for many, their lives taken by the horrors of warfare and worse things still. What had happened in those shadows? He cursed the curiosity that compelled him to probe into every dark corner, but he had no choice. his children's lives depended on him. As he pushed the creaking gate open, a rush of cold air swept past him, carried by an unseen force that made him shudder. He took a step inside, the ground crunching beneath his feet like brittle bones. The silence was deafening, so heavy it felt alive, wrapping around him like a fog. Somewhere deep inside, he knew he was not alone. Treading cautiously, Jake ventured further in, the dying light from his phone illuminating only a few feet ahead. The walls, covered in peeling paint and grime, looked like they could tell stories of their own, stories drenched in sorrow and fear. Flickering memories raced through his mind, visions of soldiers, their faces pale and haunting, staring back at him in desperation. Suddenly, a voice pierced the stillness. "Help us, save the children." It wasn't just a whisper, it was a chorus of pain and urgency that tugged at the core of Jake's being. He stumbled backward, heart racing, the realization slamming into him that this place was not just a remnant of the past, it was alive, and it hungered. "Lily! Max!" he shouted, panic gripping him like a vice. "Where are you?" The unanswered echoes mocked him, phantoms of laughter now swirling into a storm of fear. His instincts kicked in, driving him deeper into the factory's bowels. The air grew heavier, thick with despair. As he rounded a corner, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He turned sharply, only to find nothing, a mere twist of shadow. Yet there was a pulse to the darkness, a rhythm that throbbed through the air, whispering their names softly, almost coaxingly. "Damn it!" he cursed, pressing onward. Then suddenly, from the darkness ahead, shapes began to coalesce. Figures, indistinct at first, began swirling like smoke, a multitude of lost souls trapped in a loop of torment. Jake's breath hitched as he recognized the hollow eyes, the twisted mouths crying out in despair. They were soldiers. They were real. A chill ran down his spine as one of the figures reached out, fingers elongated and trembling. "Join us, join us!" it rasped, and Jake froze. Time felt suspended. In that moment, he knew that the path forward could lead him to his children or to his doom. Panic clawed at him, paralyzing his every thought. He could either run or confront the truth lurking in the heart of Mill Hollow. But as the faceless forms swirled closer, he realized there was no choice left. With every ounce of courage, he pressed on, heart hammering, the voices growing louder, begging for release. The deeper he went, the more he could feel connections unraveling, threads stretching back to the children's laughter, to the man who watched, to the very fabric of Mill Hollow. Was he losing himself? And then, from the depths, a hollow echo throbbed through the factory, called his name, Jake. He stumbled, uncertainty clouding his once steady resolve. What awaited him at the epicenter of this nightmare? Would he uncover the truth behind the voices or become yet another lost soul entwined in their haunting? Summoning all his strength, he pressed forward. But as he crossed the threshold into the heart of darkness, he felt something terrible shift behind him, and realized some things should never be uncovered. What horrors would Jake face as he chased the spectral echoes calling for his children? Time was running out. The darkness closed around Jake like a vice, suffocating and thick. Each breath felt like inhaling despair itself. The echoes of his own name faded into an ominous silence, replaced by the rhythmic pulsing that seemed to resonate from the very walls of the factory. He plunged deeper, driven by a primal instinct to rescue Lily and Max, even while the grotesque figures swirled at the edges of his vision. Please, the plaintive voices wrapped around him, a chorus of pain that clawed at his heart, making his stomach churn. Join us, no, he thought. He had to resist, that he pressed on, each step heavier than the last. The shadows danced, flickering at the corner of his eye, mocking him, taunting him. Glimpses of soldiers flashed before him, their eyes sunken, as if eternally trapped in a cycle of suffering. His mind struggled to rationalize what he was seeing. Were they truly lost souls? Or mere figments of his fear? Each haunted visage blurred with memory, haunting him with the faces of friends long gone, similar, but different. They all seemed to be reaching for him, pleading for release. Then, a sudden crash echoed from the depths of the factory, sending a violent jolt through the air. What was that? Was it them? Had he disturbed something more sinister? Panic surged through him again, but he pushed it down. He pressed on, navigating the maze-like interior bathed in the sickly glow of his phone. He stumbled into a vast room, filled with machinery frozen in time, warped by rust and neglect. The oppressive weight of despair settled around him like a suffocating fog, each beat of his heart amplified in the eerie stillness. In the center, a large machine sat ominously, its gears weathered, its purpose long forgotten. A chill crept up his spine as he sensed its importance, as if it were a sentinel that held secrets he wasn't ready to confront. Jake, voice, this time softer, more familiar, weaved through the air. Was it Lily? He strained his ears, searching for the source in the oppressive silence, his pulse pounding through his temples. Lily? He called, hope and dread clashing violently in his chest. The room seemed to tremble, vibrating with energy as the shadows began to swirl again. He sensed desperation in the air, a potent urgency that beckoned him closer to the machine. Movement. To his left, against the far wall, something shifted. The shadows writhed, splitting apart to reveal the outlines of small figures, two children huddled together, their faces pale under the flickering light. His heart leapt. Lily. Max. But before he could reach them, the air thickened, constricting around him. The voices roared back, a cacophony of horrifying whispers, drowning out his hopes. Join us, save them, join us. He halted, uncertainty gnawing at him. The machine's gears whirred to life with a ghastly grinding noise, filling his ears with a dreadful melody, a tune that suffocated reason and sparked panic. The children's faces twisted, anguish etched deeply in their eyes. Were they still children? A blinding flash erupted from the machine, engulfing all in light for a heartbeat before plunging him back into darkness. He stood frozen. Was this some sort of trap? Or a lifeline? As he wavered, the shadows converged, their forms now more monstrous than he could bear. Desperation clawed at his insides. The choice was clear: stay and confront whatever haunted this machinery, or run, leaving the children to face an unseen menace alone. The shrieks thundered in his ears, pressing harder as if the very factory were alive, and in that oppressive moment, Jake made a decision. Release them. He shouted into the void, bracing against the tide of whispers enveloping him, but were those really the words he wished to utter? As the echoes rolled back, something inside him warned sometimes, the darkest truths should remain buried. What would he unleash by defying this nightmare? The shadows surged forward, and the room trembled around him, as if the very foundation of the factory was ready to collapse under the weight of its horrors. Could he really face the truth, or was he already too far gone? What would happen next? The answers felt perilously close, yet shrouded in doom. The shadows lunged, engulfing Jake in a thick, suffocating blackness. He stumbled back, colliding with the cold metal of the machinery. Panic seized his heart as he fought to breathe, to think. The whispers surged louder, a symphony of despair, each note twisted and warped. Join us, they beckoned, an insistent chant echoing off the walls of his mind. He had to focus, to block it out. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to remember why he was here. Lily and Max. Their faces spurred him forward, even as the air thickened with dread. Stay strong, he whispered, like a mantra. The grinding noise of the machine grew deafening. Each pulse of sound vibrated through his bones, rattling him to the core. He forced his eyes open, scanning the room once more. The outlines of the children flickered at the edges of his vision, wavering like ghosts trapped between dimensions, real, yet untouchable. They needed him. With newfound determination, he pushed deeper into the chaos, towards the machine. It loomed before him, a towering monolith of rust and age, calling to him. The gears throbbed like a living creature. He approached it cautiously, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. What secrets did it hold? Did it have the power to save the children, or was it merely a harbinger of their doom? Suddenly, the familiar voices shifted. They no longer called for him to join them. Instead, they twisted, taking on a new meaning. Rescue them, escape, join us. The words twisted in his mind, creating an unbearable conflict. Escape? But what would that mean for the children? Save them? He loved them. He needed to do something. With a swift motion, he reached out, placing his hands on the machine's surface. It was hot, radiating energy that pulsed beneath his fingertips. He could feel something deep inside begging him to interfere. As he pressed harder, visions flared behind his eyes, memories of laughter, warmth, safety, and then shadows creeping in, stealing that light away. Jake! It was Lily's voice, clearer now than ever, bursting through the shroud of despair. Help us! Lily! He shouted back, desperation clawing at his throat. The machine responded to their cries. It groaned, a tortured sound that echoed around the chamber. The walls trembled, and for a split second, Jake thought he could shatter this darkness. But then, steel slid grinding over steel as if waking old spirits from their slumber. And then came the eyes. Hundreds of them. Piercing through the shadows, glowing like embers in the night. The monstrous figures that had danced around him now surged closer, a wave of despair rushing to crush him. They surrounded the machine, grotesque images tangled in the human form, an army of the lost. Join us, save us, they hissed, a threatening symphony that melded the cries of the children into something deeper, darker. Fear twisted in Jake's stomach like a snake, constricting tighter. He was losing them, losing himself. Go away! He screamed, raising his hands in a futile attempt to shield himself from the encroaching terror. Out of nowhere, a flash erupted from the machine again, illuminating the room with a blinding white light. The shadows screamed, recoiling from the brilliant burst. Something was happening, he felt it. The children's voices mixed with the roar of the machinery, forming a chorus of fear and hope, but in the depths of that light, a quick flash of darkness swirled around his feet like smoke. And it whispered in a language older than time, a dark promise. Join us or lose them, forever. Jake's heart raced, the choices slicing through him like a knife. What awaited him on the other side of that decision? Would he save them, or would he lose everything? As the shadows lunged, he braced himself, ready to face whatever horror lay ahead, knowing the truth might be darker than any nightmare. What was the cost of defying this fate? The threads of his destiny felt like they were unraveling, and he had to choose, but which path would he take? The light enveloped Jake, swallowing the encroaching shadows whole. For a fleeting moment, time stood still. It felt like breathing in serenity, a sharp contrast against the chaos swirling in his mind. He felt weightless, as if he was drifting in a dream where anything was possible. Then, just as quickly, reality crashed back hard. The white light flickered, giving way to the haunting whispers that slithered back, coiling around him like a snake. Join us, they sang again, now sweeter, more enticing. A sickening blend of affection and fear. Lily. Max. He shouted into the void, but the suffocating darkness crept back in, heavy and sorrowful. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out everything but the echo of despair as the shadows resumed their advance. As he stumbled, the metal floor slick beneath him. It was not just fear that filled the air, there was something else, a palpable sense of longing intertwined with the shadows. They felt familiar, almost comforting, yet their intentions were lethal. Jake! Help us! Was it Lily? Or was it just another trick of the dark? Unease festered in his gut. He tried to fight the rising tide of dread, his heart racing faster now. I'm coming. Ahead, he could see the machine still throbbing with that ominous energy. Each pulse echoed like a heartbeat, each roar of machinery a reminder of the stakes at hand. He rushed toward it, desperation coursing through his veins. Was it true? Would it save them or doom him? He placed his hands back on the surface, the heat seeping into his bones. And then, the machine reacted with a deafening clang, a panel swung open, revealing a dark void inside. The shadows surged forward, swallowing the space as if beckoning him into their abyss. "Join us, Jake. We can protect you. We can give you power." They lured him, tempting him with promises of safety, of strength. What power could he wield? Would it be worth the price? In that moment, he glimpsed Lily and Max, their faces etched in terror, struggling within the starlit chaos of the machine. Jake's heart shattered at their sight. "I won't leave you," he screamed. But the machine pulsed, creating a chasm of conflicting emotions within him. The darkness around closed in tighter, the figures of the lost forming a wall, their hollow eyes shimmering with countless stories of regret. "Join us." A flicker of hope ignited as he remembered their laughter. That brief vision shimmered against the darkness in his mind. They were still there, he could save them. He had to. With a deep breath, he grabbed the machine's hot surface with both hands, channeling every ounce of love he had for his siblings into it. The room erupted in chaos. The shadows screamed louder, as if denouncing his defiance, but he shouted back, "I will not abandon them. I choose them." In response, the machine glowed brighter, shooting out beams of light that wrapped around him, pushing the darkness back. The shadows shrieked as they sensed their hold loosening. The atmosphere thickened with raw energy, a battlefield of desperation and resilience, but just as hope surged, the whispers grew more intense, hissing in anger. They clawed at Jake's mind. "You cannot save them. You will pay the price." A sudden crash echoed through the room as the ground trembled, and an unsettling rumble filled the air. The fight to save the children had awakened something ancient and furious within the machine. Was it truly a savior, or was it a trap? Jake teetered dangerously between light and dark, between sacrifice and salvation. Fear pooled in his stomach as the shadows pressed in one last time, whispering the darkest truth yet, "Join us or watch them die." Would he risk everything to battle this unholy horror, or was he doomed to lose them all? As the world around him shifted precariously, a question loomed in the storm of his heart and mind. What would he sacrifice to rescue those he loved? The machine's vibration intensified, throbbing like a heartbeat gone mad. Jake felt the energy surge through him, both a blessing and a curse. The shadows writhed around him, angrier now, slashing at the light. "You think you can save them?" they hissed, their voices layered with malicious laughter. "You are but a boy." "Enough!" Jake shouted, desperation cracking his voice. He had to focus. He had to remember why he was here. Lily's and Max's faces appeared in his mind, their frightened eyes pleading for help. He couldn't allow this darkness to consume them or he'd lose everything. Taking a step back from the machine, Jake cast a glance around the cavernous space. The walls pulsed with murky shadows, and the very air thickened with tension. He was engulfed in an unseen storm that drummed against his chest. The whispers grew louder, swirling into a deafening chaos, almost drowning out his thoughts. They were pushing him, pulling him into their depths. He wrestled with the urge to give in. What would it feel like? To let go of the struggle? To surrender to the power they offered? "Jake! Please!" A flicker of Lily's voice snapped him back to reality. He couldn't falter now. Gathering every shred of courage, he turned back to the machine. He remembered the warmth of their hugs, the times they laughed together, and the simple joy they had shared. He would not let memories fade like dying embers. "Stay strong, you too." He called into the darkness, an anchor for his heart. The shadows recoiled at his words, momentarily stunned. Seizing the chance, Jake reached out, pressing his palm flat against the heated surface of the machine once more, pushing through the shadows' screams. He could feel it building in him, a fierce, vital energy. But the ground quaked violently, shaking Jake to his core. The machine let out a bone-rattling growl, and suddenly he was thrown backward, colliding with the metal floor. The room spun, the ceiling tilting as if they were trapped inside a colossal heart, beating against their will. Join us, the voices surged, a tide of allure and despair. Surrender, and they will be safe. He shook his head, disoriented but resolute. A notion struck him: it wasn't just about power. It was about love, bravery, and his refusal to lose the ones who mattered most. But how could love fight against such insidious darkness? Jake, the voices softened for a moment, sweet as honey, don't fight, you can have all that you desire. Just give in. That was the moment the machine surged again, and the lights exploded, a fierce cascade of white igniting within the chaos. Everything around him dimmed, consumed in flashes of brilliance and terror. Dim figures elongated and twisted in the corner of his eyes, dying to escape the light. Far away, he heard Lily and Max crying. The sound pushed through the cacophony, sweet as a memory. They were right there, and if he lost it, the anger, the despair, all of it would shatter into oblivion. With a roar that echoed in the chasms of the machine, Jake flung himself toward the core. He maneuvered through the tumult, fighting against the disorienting darkness. The shadows lashed out like serpents, but he was fueled by resolve, armed with the hope of his siblings. He was close, dangerously close, but suddenly, a figure emerged from the thick mist, the darkness coalescing into a solid form, a silhouette crowned in despair, a visage so haunting that it froze him in place. It bore the features of someone he knew, someone he dared not think about. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken horrors, and Jake's heart raced as the figure stepped closer, revealing not just familiarity but an undeniable knowledge of his fears. "Do you recognize me, Jake?" It hissed, voice like rusty chains dragging against concrete. In that moment, the room fell silent, the shadows still as time halted on a threadbare edge. Jake felt the cold grip of dread clutch his heart. His memories surged, intertwining with the shadows, threatening to drag him down. As fear spread through him, illuminating the dark corners of his past, an unthinkable question arose: was this darkness truly there to devour him or to set him free? The truth lingered just out of reach, obscured by the veil of the unknown. Would he face it or allow the darkness to claim him? The choice hung between them, weighted by everything he stood to lose. Jake's breath came ragged, each inhale a struggle against the thick tension that suffocated him. The figure loomed closer, eyes reflecting the depths of night itself. He could feel its presence digging into him, the weight of it was tangible, like a stone pressing down on his chest. Memories shattered against the sharp edges of terror, each fragment a mirror reflecting his deepest fears. "Leave me alone!" Jake yelled, voice strained and raw, a hint of desperation creeping in. "You can't escape, Jake," the figure whispered, leaning in with an unsettling familiarity. "You invited this darkness. You've always wanted to know, haven't you?" The truth lurked between them like a predator in the shadows, hungry for revelation but seemingly content to play with its prey. His heart raced, pounding against the walls of his ribcage. He had no time to waste on memories he feared to confront. With every ounce of strength, Jake shook his head. "I won't give in." But doubt echoed within him, planted by that sinister voice. What if he was the cause of this torment? What if he had called forth the shadows himself? Images of his past moments of anger and despair seeped into his mind, intertwining with the darkness swirling in the corners of reality. The shadows around him shuddered, vibrating with a renewed ferocity as if the figure fed off Jake's hesitation. They slashed at the air, their shrieks echoing like taunts. "Join us, understand your fears," they hissed, growing bolder. Jake felt the air around him warp with every flicker of light. Glimmers of hope danced just out of reach, threatening to snuff out. He couldn't let them go. He thought of Lily and Max, their innocent laughter ringing like chimes in the distance, guiding him through despair. "Enough!" he shouted again, temper rising. "I know you, I reject you." That single declaration felt like setting off a firecracker in the back of his mind, resonating through the machine and igniting something within him. Suddenly, the air crackled, the lights around him flickering violently. A surge hit him, a pulse of energy, bright and warm, like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. He could feel the darkness recoil from it, trembling and snarling, but it was still closing in, tightening its grip. "Fool! You think you can defy us?" The figure sneered, its voice serrated with rage. "You don't even understand what I am." Jake's hands trembled against the machine's surface, buzzing with power. He had to face the truth, had to uncover the depth of this horror. But fear gnawed at him, whispering doubts into his ears. What if surrendering meant discovering something he wasn't ready to accept? He forced himself to stand firm, stubbornly clinging to hope, the thought of Lily and Max like a beacon guiding him through. "You're not real. You're just a lie." The figure paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing its twisted face. The shadows appeared to hesitate, drawn back for a moment as the strength surged in Jake like a tide. But a grotesque smile split the figure's features. "And yet, here I am. You can't cut ties with the past, Jake. It clings to you like this darkness." Jake's mind raced, the truth striking him hard. They had long been intertwined, the shadows he feared were shaped from the regrets and pain of his own making. With a desperate gasp, he pushed deeper into the machine's pulse, feeling the energy building like a storm, but he had to refine it. The light he sought was buried beneath the weight of his own doubts. "Lily. Max." His voice broke as he called for them. He thought of their smiles, the warmth of family, and in that moment, the clarity burned bright. The figure howled as light arched through the chamber, shattering the darkness, but it lunged its icy grasp snatching at Jake's arm, wrapping him in an embrace he could not thrash away. "Face your fears or lose everything," it screamed, voice shifting from malicious to desperate. And with a deafening crash, the world around him erupted, the shadows screaming against the raw surge of light. But Jake was nearly lost in the chaos of it, a fight raging not just outside, but within. As the light intensified, a single thought edged its way into his mind: had he truly summoned these shadows, or had he become one of them? The light flickered, began to dim, and the darkness coiled tighter. As he felt it pulling him down, the question surged like a wave: would he find redemption or succumb to the void? Jake fought against it, but the boundary was blurring, and he was running out of time. What would remain of him if he failed? The answer lay just across the threshold, waiting to be revealed in the next heartbeat. The light flickered one last time, spluttering like a dying flame, and for a moment, everything hung in the balance. Jake felt himself suspended on the edge of oblivion, where hope battled despair with no clear victor. Then he was pulled into darkness. Panic surged through him, electrifying his nerves like a jagged current. He thrashed against the icy tendrils wrapping tighter around him, dragging him deeper into a void swirling with whispers. They crawled over his skin, mimicking voices he knew all too well: Lily calling him home, Max giggling in the backyard. But now they twisted, tainted with malice, haunting echoes of what he had failed to protect. Jake, the figure hissed, its voice slithering through the shadows. "You're just like us now. Embrace it." "No," he screamed, fighting against the pull. "You're wrong. I'm not like you." With a surge of rage, he felt a spark ignite in his core. He willed it outward, a desperate attempt to torch the encroaching void. Light shot from his fingertips, illuminating a path, but it was weak, flickering like a candle in a hurricane. The shadows hissed, recoiling, but their grip did not loosen. They wrapped around him, weaving through his thoughts, stripping layers of bravery until he stood naked in his fears. Memories clawed at him, dredging up every regret. The sleepless nights, the arguments, the moments he turned away. Each one whispered accusations, sowing doubt. "Is that what you wanted?" A voice crooned sweetly, pulling him off balance. "To witness your own unraveling? To see the truth you've hidden?" Jake squeezed his eyes shut, desperate to shut out the truth he didn't want to hear. But that truth was a snake coiling around his heart, the realization that he had always feared what he could not control. He felt the ground shift beneath him, solid one moment then giving way, like a sandcastle under waves. Was he really losing everything? I have to fight, he thought, forcing his eyes open. There had to be a way. Suddenly, he remembered. The machine. The energy pulsing from it. If he could harness it, amplify it. With a ferocity he didn't know he possessed, he pushed against the shadows, taking a deep breath and centering himself, fingers twitching impatiently. He reached for that pulse of light vibrating beneath his skin, drawing it out like a hidden weapon. Lily, Max. He bellowed their names, harnessing all his love and guilt, pouring everything into the energy. The golden light erupted, illuminating the void, severing the grip of shadow, forcing the figure back. It roared in fury, the sound swirling like a tornado, trying to reclaim its hold. You think this changes anything? You're still bound to me. You're still mine. Jake felt the threads of the connection snap, but it wasn't enough. Darkness writhed, relentlessly trying to encroach upon him again. He pressed on, forcing the light against the tide, but he could feel himself weakening. Don't give up. He whispered to himself, summoning the last of his strength. Suddenly, there was a flicker something from the corner of his eye. A glimmering figure darted through the darkness. No, not a figure, a memory. A moment, pure and bright, bursting forth like a dawn breaking over the horizon. Jake! It was Lily. Before he could think, she laughed, her voice ringing clear, smooth as glass. Come on. I'm with you. The warmth flooded him, and in that moment, the darkness recoiled once again, the bindings loosening like ropes untangling. But as quickly as the hope surged forward, a sharp chill struck him from behind. The figure was back, rage spilling from its eyes. Fool! It shouted, reaching out, clawed hands stretching for him in desperation. This isn't over. Jake turned to face it, heart racing. He had a choice to make, but would he muster the courage to confront the creature he had run from all along? And just as he prepared for what came next, the ground beneath him liquefied, pulling him into a new, darker abyss, one where the echoes of defeated whispers mingled with the screams of forgotten dreams. What awaited him below? The depths were uncharted. The truth still cloaked in shadows. Was there a way to confront this evil, or would it swallow him whole? The answer flickered like a dying star, just out of reach, and Jake was left teetering on the brink of an unfathomable plunge into horror. The pull was relentless. Jake felt the darkness churn around him, alive and hungry. Each breath came shallow, a gasp trapped in his throat as he sank deeper into the churning abyss. Fear clawed at his mind, he could barely distinguish between the whispers and his own thoughts. Jake, come play. That familiar voice twisted, curdled like rotten fruit, turning sweetness to poison. Memories flashed, Lily wearing that dress, twirling in the sunlight. Max, his laughter bubbling over like a brook. But now, those images twisted, suffocated under shadows laden with guilt. The whispers morphed, echoing his failures louder than any scream. Suddenly, the darkness was split by a jarring light. Jake blinked, momentarily disoriented. He found himself standing in a vast emptiness, a graveyard of shadows surrounded by silvery mist. It swirled in the air like smoke from ghostly fires. The ground beneath him felt soft, almost like being on a surface of foam. A flicker, a presence. He turned, eyes wide. There, in the mist, was the figure, a distorted amalgamation of shadows taking form. It wore a smile, but it wasn't friendly, it was predatory, curling around its face like a serpent. Playing with memories, Jake? It taunted, words dripped with venom. How fragile they've become. Jake felt a jolt of rage. Get away from me. His voice cracked, but he steadied himself. He needed to focus, to hold on to the memory of light flooding his heart. Let us play a game. The figure swayed, fingers extending as if stretching toward him, and snaring the very air. A game of truth. Would you rather confront your failures or keep both eyes closed? Terror coursed through him like ice, hands trembling, but he steeled himself. Regrets began to crowd his mind, each one a shard of glass, sharp and dangerous. I won't hide from you. I'll face them. Very brave, Jake, it sneered, stepping forward. The shadows coiled around its legs, whispering temptations. But the question is, are you ready to discover just how deep your darkness runs? Before he could respond, the ground convulsed, the mist thickening as it drew close, whispering secrets that made his skin crawl. The memories flickered more violently, images splattering against his vision like rain on glass. He saw Lily's face, distorted with despair, her blue eyes wide with fear. Jake? Her voice echoed, mixing with the shadows until it became a hollow moan. Lily! He shouted, panic surging. Where are you? Can you save her? The figure taunted. Or are you just as worthless as I've shown you to be? In that moment, the weight of his culpability bore down like a boulder pressing his chest. The connection to his loved ones felt tenuous, a thread pulled too tight. Don't give up. Jake shouted into the swirling chaos, his voice breaking the spell, resonating with desperate hope. With every ounce of conviction he could muster, he reached deep into the shadows, pulling at their fabric, unraveling the lies that intertwined with his memories. The darkness bucked, the figure's smile faltering as Jake pushed back against its oppressive weight. But just then, the whispers escalated to a cacophony. They were overwhelming, chaotic voices from the past pleading, taunting. You can't escape. You can't run. As the shrieking voices crescendoed, the ground beneath Jake's feet split open. He was falling again, the sensation raw and gut-wrenching, spiraling into an unknown that held all of his unresolved fears. Even as he plummeted, he could hear the figure shouting behind him, its voice clawing at his conscience. It's not the end. You will see. You're still bound to the curse. And just before he lost all sense of gravity, a flash of light ignited, revealing a glimpse of a figure standing resolute in the distance. Was that Lily? Or was it a trick of the darkness? Jake's heart raced. The truth lurked just out of reach, waiting to ensnare him once again. Would he fight against the gaping maw of despair, or succumb to the haunting terror of his past? In that final moment of descent, with shadows licking at his heels, Jake knew the real game had only just begun. Jake fell into darkness, a void churning with echoes of despair and whispers of defeat. As he spiraled, a desperate voice broke through the chaos, a flickering spark of hope. Jake! We're here. It was Lily's voice, clear as a bell amid the storm. With every ounce of his will, he fought the pull of the shadows and focused on her words, trying to anchor himself in that flicker of warmth. Suddenly, he landed on solid ground, a strange, empty room illuminated by faint, ghostly lights. The air buzzed with a tension that made his skin crawl. The same haunting figure stood before him, an embodiment of all his fears, but now it felt different, less like a monster and more like a reflection of everything he had ever hidden inside. Welcome back, Jake, it hissed, its eyes flickering with anticipation. Do you finally understand what you've invited into your life? This darkness is a part of you. Jake's heart raced as memories swarmed around him. Regrets. Choices. Times he failed to protect those he loved. Get away from me. He shouted, shaking off the paralysis. He stepped forward, fists clenched, fueled by the fire of determination ignited by his children's voices. Think carefully, the figure taunted. Win or lose, you're bound to this darkness. But Jake smiled grimly, finding strength in his children's faces. This time, he wouldn't succumb. No. I won't let you win. I choose to fight. I choose them. A surge of light erupted from his core, brightening the room and pushing back against the suffocating shadows. The figure reeled back, shrieking as the light cut through its form like a blade. You think that light can save you? It spat, though the tremor in its voice suggested doubt. I know it can, Jake declared, drawing on every ounce of love he felt for Lily and Max. "They are my strength." The small flicker of warmth grew into a brilliant blaze, lighting the room with renewed hope. The shadows shrieked, twisting and writhing under the onslaught of his love. Jake's feet found their footing, and he stood firm, embracing the light within him that connected him to all he held dear. "Together, we can break this curse," he roared, calling out to Lily and Max, who had quickly manifested out of the shadows beside him. They reached for him, small hands stretching toward his, faces filled with unwavering trust and love. The darkness recoiled, threatening to pull them back, but the bond they shared was a force unlike anything it had anticipated. "No!" it screeched in futility. Jake closed his eyes, feeling the pressure of the shadows scream against the light. "This ends now." He focused everything, his failures, fears, love, and determination into one electrifying blend. "Be free!" he shouted, and the light surged forward, washing over everything. The air crackled and shimmered as shadows writhed against the brilliance. With a final roar, the darkness shattered, fragmented shards spiraling away into oblivion. The room exploded in light, a dazzling beacon scattering every whisper of despair until only silence remained. When the dust settled, Jake opened his eyes. He stood in the factory, now bathed in warm sunlight cascading through shattered windows, the machinery dormant but silent. Lily and Max were safe beside him, their faces glowing with relief and love. They rushed into his arms, and he enveloped them, tears of joy rolling down his cheeks. "We did it!" he exclaimed, holding them tightly. "You're safe. We're safe. I knew you'd come for us," Lily exclaimed, her laughter clear and bright. Max joined in, the sound ringing like a sweet melody that filled the empty spaces of the factory. Jake let out a long breath of relief, feeling the weight lift off his chest. The darkness was gone, banished to where it belonged, and he could finally breathe freely. As they stepped outside, the sun enveloped them, warming their skin. Mill Hollow felt alive again, the once twisted streets now echoing with laughter and the promise of new beginnings. The air was crisp and fresh, the shadows of the past replaced by hope glimmering in every corner. Looking over at his children, pure happiness filled his heart. They were finally free from the turmoil that had consumed them, as was he. They could start anew, no longer haunted by the past. Jake glanced back at the factory one last time, a bittersweet feeling lingering. The memories would remain, but now they were just fragments of a battle won. Together, they turned and walked towards home, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next together. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support because it makes a huge difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion and your thoughts on Jake's journey. And don't wait even one more second, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this resolution. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, so make your voice heard.